They talk, you work. You ever notice how the loudest people in the room are rarely the ones doing the work? They talk, they speculate, they criticize, they analyze, they give advice, and they keep talking. Meanwhile, you work, you stay up late fixing what no one sees. You show up early to start what no one understands. You make the hard calls, send the uncomfortable emails, take the awkward silence and turn it into progress. You sweat, you sacrifice. You put in the hours, the reps, the thought, the soul. You do the work, and here's what nobody tells you. The ones who change things, the ones who make a dent, who leave a mark, are rarely the loudest. They're just the most consistent. You don't need to announce every step of your journey. You don't need to broadcast every win. You don't need to respond to every critic. Because here's the truth. When you're building something real, you don't have time to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. They talk, you work. Let them talk about how things should be done. Let them debate the perfect plan. Let them gossip, tweet, complain, and posture. While they do that, you build the business, you craft the art, you write the book, you solve the problem, you raise the family. You fight the fight because talk doesn't change the world, work does. Talk doesn't move people, action does. Talk doesn't inspire trust, showing up every day does. So, if they're talking about you good, that means you're doing something worth noticing. But don't stop to answer them. Don't stop to please them. Don't stop to join them. Stay focused. Stay quiet if you must, but stay moving. Because history doesn't remember the chatter. It remembers the ones who kept building through the noise, so let them talk. In a world that often rewards volume over value, it's easy to mistake noise for progress. We live in a time where people measure success by how loudly and frequently they can talk about what they're going to do. Social media thrives on this. Meetings are filled with people eager to share their opinion, but slow to take on responsibility. It's tempting to think that the one who talks the most, posts the most, or appears the busiest must be the most effective. But the truth is simpler and far more powerful. Consistency beats noise. There's something deeply admirable about a person who shows up day after day, especially when no one is watching. The person who continues to put in the work even when the spotlight has moved on. This type of individual doesn't need to announce their effort or justify their process. They understand something most people don't, that real progress is invisible for a long time. The foundation of any lasting achievement is built in silence, through repetition, discipline, and focus. Think about it. The athlete who performs under the stadium lights didn't earn their success in that moment. They earned it in the early mornings when it was just them and the cold air, long before anyone was cheering. The artist whose work goes viral didn't just stumble onto genius. They honed their craft often for years without applause or recognition. The entrepreneur who launches a successful company didn't just get lucky, they were consistent long before anyone believed in them. In each of these cases, consistency did the heavy lifting. Noise wasn't necessary. The problem with noise is that it tricks us. It feels good to talk about what we plan to do. It feels productive. We get quick validation, social likes, nods of approval, even admiration, all before we've done anything real. That dopamine hit is deceptive. It gives us the illusion of progress without requiring actual effort. But noise is short-lived. It fades. It's only as strong as the next distraction. Consistency, on the other hand, compounds. It builds momentum. It deepens trust. It doesn't need attention because it creates results. There's a quiet confidence that comes from doing the work every day without asking for praise. It's the kind of confidence that can't be faked. When you're consistent, you stop caring about comparisons. You stop worrying about who's ahead. You stop measuring yourself against noise. You know what you're building. You know why you're building it. You're no longer motivated by approval, but by purpose. That's the shift that changes everything. Consistency demands something that noise never will: patience. It asks you to plant seeds without seeing immediate growth. It asks you to believe in the process even when the results are invisible. That's where most people give up. Not because they're incapable, but because they're addicted to outcomes instead of effort. But those who endure the quiet, who persist through the unnoticed seasons, are the ones who build something that lasts. Another difference between noise and consistency is that noise is reactive, while consistency is intentional. Noise waits for an audience. Consistency creates regardless of who's watching. Noise chases attention. Consistency builds reputation. Noise is about perception. Consistency is about reality. And in the end, reality always wins. In any meaningful pursuit, whether you're building a business, raising a family, mastering a skill, or changing your life, you will hit walls. You'll encounter setbacks, doubt, fatigue, and failure. Noise won't help you there. It won't make you stronger. It won't move you forward, but consistency will. It gives you a base, a rhythm, a way to keep moving even when motivation disappears. Consistency turns effort into habit and habit into character. That's the invisible architecture of greatness. People often ask, what's the secret? The truth is, there usually isn't one. The highest performers, the ones you admire, the ones who have built something meaningful, didn't get there by being louder. They got there by being relentless. They got there by showing up when it was inconvenient. By pushing through boredom, by choosing discipline over drama, by doing the boring stuff, the hard stuff, the unglamorous stuff again and again. It's not that they never feel like quitting. It's that they've trained themselves to keep going regardless. Consistency becomes a form of identity. This is just what I do. There's no negotiation. There's no waiting for inspiration. They trust the power of the process. That's where the real edge lies, not in what they say, but in what they repeat. And consistency isn't just about doing the same thing over and over. It's about doing it with intention, with care, with constant refinement. It's not mindless repetition, it's focused iteration. The willingness to show up and improve even by 1% again and again. That's how excellence is built, not in a flash of genius, but in the 1,000 small decisions to stay the course. We all know people who talk about starting something, a business, a book, a project, a fitness plan, and they talk and talk, but never begin. Or they start, but the minute it gets hard, they stop. Then they pivot to something else. New idea, new goal, more talk. It's a cycle. Nothing gets built. Nothing gets finished. But the person who chooses consistency, even if they start small, even if they struggle, even if no one sees it, they are building. Quietly, steadily, intentionally, and in time that always beats the noise. In a world saturated with promises, branding, and image management, it's easy to confuse perception with reality. People talk about what they're going to do. They post ambitious goals. They give advice. They position themselves as experts. But when the time comes to deliver, many disappear. That's because talk is easy. What really builds credibility is action, not intention, not explanation, not justification, just action. Action creates results. Results create trust, and trust, not image, is the real currency of leadership, influence, and progress. You can tell people what you value, what you believe in, what your mission is, but until they see it in motion, it's just noise. People might listen to your words the first time, but after that, they watch what you do. Because action, over time, reveals who you truly are. We've all seen it. The person who says they're going to start the company, launch the product, write the book, change their life. The declaration sounds impressive, passionate, maybe even inspiring. But weeks go by, months, nothing happens. Maybe they come back with another plan, another idea, another burst of energy, but still no consistent action. Eventually, people stop paying attention, not because the dream wasn't big enough, but because there was no follow-through. Action is the proof. Think about the people you respect the most, the ones you trust, the ones you go to for advice. Chances are, it's not because they talk the most or market themselves the best. It's because you've seen them do the work. You've seen them show up when it was hard. You've seen them make sacrifices. You've seen their consistency, their resilience, their commitment. Their credibility wasn't built in one moment. It was earned over time through action. Action carries weight that words never can. One step forward, even a small one, is more valuable than 10 conversations about what could be. The world is full of commentary. Everyone has opinions. Everyone has theories. But action is rare, and that makes it powerful. Especially in moments where others hesitate, the person who moves stands out. Not because they're louder, but because they're reliable. We often assume that people need to hear more from us to believe in us. More explanation, more storytelling, more visibility. But what people actually need is evidence. They need to see the behavior match the belief. They need to see you make the hard choice. They need to see you put the mission before the ego. They need to see you own the outcome even when it's inconvenient. That's what earns respect. That's what creates authority, and action isn't just about big wins. It's not just launching a company or achieving some public milestone. It's in the small things, the way you show up on time, the way you follow through on your promises, the way you handle pressure, the way you treat people when you think no one's watching. These actions build something far more lasting than likes or attention. They build character. There's a quiet power in someone who doesn't need to announce their every move. They don't need to explain themselves constantly. They don't need to prove anything. Because they understand that credibility isn't something you talk your way into, it's something you earn by doing what you said you would do, consistently, especially when it's hard. They understand that their reputation will be shaped not by what they claim, but by what they demonstrate. This is especially true in leadership. A title doesn't make someone a leader. Action does. People don't follow words, they follow example. If you want to lead, you have to go first. You have to model the behavior. You have to live the standard. You have to act when it's inconvenient, when it's uncomfortable, when it's uncertain. That's where leadership is forged, not in meetings or mission statements, but in the actual choices you make when no one else is willing to. Action also creates clarity. Often, people get stuck because they're trying to think their way to certainty. They analyze, plan, and talk in circles, waiting for the perfect moment to begin. But clarity doesn't come from more thinking. It comes from movement. When you act, you get feedback. You learn, you adjust. That's how progress is made. It's messy, it's imperfect, but it's real, and it separates the doers from the dreamers. Another thing action does is build confidence. Not the false kind that comes from hype or external validation, but the grounded kind that comes from experience. When you act, you prove to yourself that you can do hard things, that you can survive discomfort, that you can grow. Confidence isn't built in your head, it's built in your hands, in your feet, in the movement of showing up again and again, no matter how you feel. People often think they need motivation before they can act. But it's the opposite. You act first and then motivation follows. You don't wait to feel ready. You decide to move forward. That movement builds momentum, and that momentum builds belief. It rewires your mind. It shifts your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who only plans. You become someone who executes, someone who honors their commitments, someone who finishes what they start. Action also earns trust in relationships. Whether it's personal or professional, people want to know that you'll be there, that you'll do what you said, that you're consistent under pressure. Trust doesn't come from a great speech or a clever message. It comes from reliability. When you act with integrity, you don't have to convince people they feel it. They see it, and over time, that consistency builds loyalty that no branding campaign ever could. It's easy to underestimate the power of a single action, one honest conversation, one moment of courage, one disciplined choice. But that's where credibility begins, not in some grand performance, but in the everyday decision to move forward. Each action adds to your story. Each one either reinforces who you claim to be or reveals the gap. There's no faking it. Over time, the truth becomes visible. In a noisy world, action speaks clearly. It cuts through the clutter. It's not always dramatic. It's often quiet, subtle, and unnoticed, but it matters. It creates a foundation. It creates movement. It creates transformation. While others are busy curating perception, the one who acts is building reality. And in the long run, reality always outlasts illusion. Silence is often misunderstood. In a culture obsessed with visibility, recognition, and constant engagement, being quiet can be seen as weakness or indifference. But silence, when it comes from focus, is not weakness, it's power. There is a different kind of strength in choosing not to speak, not to explain, not to perform for the crowd. Especially when you are working, building, creating, and growing, silence becomes your ally. It is the space where deep work happens. It is the zone where distractions lose their grip and clarity takes shape. When you're focused, you're not looking for applause. You're not waiting for someone to validate your journey. You know what you're building. You understand what it costs, and you're willing to go there without broadcasting every step. You don't need the world to cheer you on, you need discipline. You need time, and you need stillness. Silence, in that sense, becomes your protection. It keeps your energy where it belongs on the work, not on the noise. There's a discipline in staying silent while others chase attention. It requires a certain type of maturity to resist the temptation to announce every plan, to defend every decision, or to react to every opinion. Because when you're focused, you realize that not everything deserves your response. Not every distraction needs your attention. You begin to see how much energy is wasted on things that don't move you forward. Silence allows you to conserve that energy, to channel it into something meaningful. It's easy to get pulled into the trap of defending your choices. When people question what you're doing, when they don't understand your process, or when they misunderstand your silence as absence, it's tempting to explain, to clarify, to make your case, but focus means trusting the process enough to let your work speak for itself. It means choosing the long game over the quick approval. It means accepting that not everyone needs to understand because you're not building for everyone. When you go silent to focus, you're not disappearing, you're evolving, you're making decisions that no one sees, you're facing challenges that no one will ever fully understand, you're making sacrifices without broadcasting them. You're choosing discipline over dopamine, and that's why it's powerful, because silence rooted in intention becomes momentum. While others are busy making noise, you're making progress. Silence also allows you to hear your own thoughts. In a noisy world, it's hard to tell the difference between what you truly want and what the world is telling you to want. But when you quiet the outside voices, when you stop sharing for the sake of reaction, something else happens. You reconnect with your own vision. You stop performing and start listening to what matters most to you. That internal alignment sharpens your focus. It grounds your ambition in purpose, not just popularity. There's also a confidence in quiet execution. When you know you're doing the work, when you see yourself growing day by day, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need the world to know how hard it is. You don't need them to understand your pace, your process, or your priority. Because you're not seeking permission. You're seeking results, and often, the most meaningful work grows in silence, away from the spotlight. Focus thrives in solitude. It needs space to breathe. Every notification, every opinion, every unnecessary update, they fragment that focus. They dilute your momentum. That's why silence becomes not just a preference, but a necessity. You carve out a space where your vision can expand without interference, where your efforts compound without interruption, where your attention belongs entirely to the mission, not to the audience. And here's something many people don't realize. When you're focused, your silence becomes a statement, not one of weakness, but of strength. It says, I'm building something real. I'm not here to perform. I'm here to execute. The people who get it, the ones who are building too, they recognize that energy. They respect it, because they understand that the deepest work often happens in the quietest rooms. There's also a kind of inner peace that comes with not needing to constantly explain yourself. You move through your day with intention. You solve problems without seeking applause. You endure challenges without dramatizing them. That steadiness becomes your edge. While others are chasing the highs and lows of external feedback, you're creating stability within yourself. That's a different kind of strength, the kind that doesn't waver every time someone doubts you or questions your choices. When you focus deeply, you start to measure success differently. It's no longer about how things look, it's about how they work. It's about whether the work feels meaningful, whether the direction feels true, whether the results are aligned with the purpose. This shift pulls you away from noise and into depth. It makes you less reactive, more intentional, less scattered, more grounded. Silence also guards your integrity. The more you talk, the more you risk speaking prematurely. Promising things before they're real, projecting confidence that you haven't earned. But when you stay silent, you give yourself space to grow without pressure. You let your progress unfold without forcing it into a narrative. That restraint is not easy, but it builds trust in yourself and eventually in others, because when you finally speak, your words carry weight. You begin to value your attention differently. You become selective about what gets your energy. You no longer react to everything. You don't let every opinion shake you. You realize that time is limited and attention is expensive, so you guard both fiercely. That's the mindset of someone focused. Someone who isn't swayed by trends or urgency. Someone who knows exactly what they're building and why. In silence, you also develop patience. You stop rushing to be seen. You understand that meaningful work doesn't reveal its rewards instantly. There are days when it feels like nothing is happening. No applause, no validation, just the grind, but you stay with it. You trust that the effort is compounding in ways you can't always measure. That's the power of quiet focus. It outlasts doubt. It outlasts noise. And when your results finally do speak, they don't need a microphone. They speak clearly, decisively, because they were built on a foundation of work, not words, of focus, not performance. That's the quiet strength that others feel even if they never fully understand it. Legacy is not built in moments of excitement or bursts of inspiration. It's built in the long stretch of ordinary days when no one is watching, when results are invisible, and when showing up feels harder than staying still. There's a myth that legacy is tied to fame or recognition, that it's something you earn after a great speech, a viral post, or a headline. But the truth is quieter. Legacy is what remains when the noise fades, when the applause stops, when the spotlight moves on. It's the impact of your actions, the consistency of your values, the story told by the work you leave behind. You don't talk your way into legacy. You don't declare it or brand it. You build it piece by piece, decision by decision. It lives in the way you treat people when there's nothing to gain. It's written in how you handle pressure, how you take responsibility, how you rise after failing. These aren't dramatic moments. They're usually small, private, and unrecorded. But they're the ones that matter most because they shape who you are, not just who you appear to be. There's a big difference between a reputation and a legacy. Reputation is what people think of you now. Legacy is what they remember when you're gone. Reputation can be curated, polished, managed. Legacy cannot. It is the cumulative result of your choices over time. It doesn't need explanation because it becomes self-evident. People may forget what you said. They may even forget what you did. But they won't forget how you made them feel, how you showed up, what you stood for. Legacy takes time. It can't be rushed. You can't microwave trust, respect, or character. They require years of showing up with integrity, with humility, with purpose. Legacy is not one grand gesture, it's thousands of small ones. It's doing the right thing when it's inconvenient. It's choosing long-term value over short-term gain. It's investing in relationships, not just transactions. It's about building something that lasts, not something that trends. There's a cost to building a legacy. You have to be willing to delay gratification. You have to be willing to sacrifice the easy win in favor of the enduring one. You might be misunderstood, doubted, ignored. People may not see your effort, your intent, your depth. But if your aim is legacy, not popularity, then you learn to live with that. You learn to find peace in the process, not in the recognition. Because legacy is not about being known, it's about being remembered for the right reason. The people who build lasting legacies aren't the ones constantly talking about what they're going to do. They're the ones doing it every day without needing attention. They're the quiet workers, the steady builders, the reliable ones. They're not loud, but they're consistent, not flashy, but firm, not always seen, but always present. Their strength is in their resilience, their patience, their commitment to something greater than themselves. Legacy is not about you, it's about the effect you have on others. It's the lessons you pass down, the values you model, the space you leave better than you found it. It's about creating systems that outlast you, developing people who rise after you, building cultures that continue to thrive without you. That's the real measure. If everything you built crumbles the moment you leave, then you didn't build a legacy, you built a dependency. Legacy is built when what you've done continues to create impact long after you're gone. There's a deep sense of purpose that comes when you stop trying to impress and start trying to contribute. When you stop chasing visibility and start chasing meaning. That shift is where legacy begins. You start asking different questions. Not, how do I get noticed? But what am I building that will matter 10 years from now? Not, how do I win today? But how do I create value that lasts? Legacy requires long thinking. It requires vision beyond the moment. It demands that you anchor yourself in purpose instead of applause. Legacy is often invisible while it's being built. You don't always see the immediate effects. You don't always feel like you're making progress, but each act of integrity, each decision to do the right thing, each time you keep going when it would be easier to stop, that's another brick, another layer, another part of the foundation. It adds up, it compounds, and one day, someone will stand on what you built and go further because you were willing to lay the groundwork. The truth is, legacy doesn't feel like legacy while you're building it. It just feels like work. It feels like discipline, like sacrifice, like choosing values over shortcuts. It feels like getting up again when you're tired, like saying no to the wrong things even when they look good, like leading by example when no one acknowledges it. You rarely feel the reward while you're in it, but later, sometimes much later, the results start to appear in people, in culture, in outcomes that endure. That's when you see the ripple effect of everything you quietly put into place. You don't have to be perfect to build a legacy, but you do have to be consistent. You have to be willing to learn, to evolve, to admit when you were wrong. You have to be committed to growth, not just for yourself, but for the people you serve. Legacy isn't about proving you were right, it's about proving that you cared enough to keep improving. It's not built on ego, but on humility. And legacy doesn't wait until the end of your career or your life. You're building it now. Every interaction, every project, every relationship, it's all part of the story. You may not control how people interpret your journey, but you control how you show up in it. That's where your influence lies, in what you choose to prioritize, in how you choose to lead, in the impact you choose to make, even when no one is looking. Most of what matters in life isn't flashy. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It's built in the spaces between the big moments, in the way you stay true to your word, in the way you take care of people, in the way you carry yourself when things go wrong. That's the kind of work that leaves an imprint. Not a brand, not a performance, but a legacy,